Alexa, play that Amazon Ads podcast.
Which one would you like to hear?
The best one.
Okay, now playing that Amazon Ads podcast.
These gentlemen are completely changing the game.
After listening to that Amazon Ads podcast, my ads are finally profitable.
I also heard they're pretty cute.
All right, welcome everybody to, I think what it's going to be is a podcast about Amazon Ads. And I'm Steven. I'm joined by Andrew. Andrew, how's it going?
Going good, Steven. How are you?
Doing well, man. So this is our very first episode. So why don't we just give everybody a quick, maybe backstory for who are you, who am I, and what is this podcast about? It's obviously about Amazon Ads, but I guess we'll say specifically what we're aiming to achieve. So, Andrew, who are you, and why should people listen?
Yeah, man. I'm Andrew. I come from a small town in Ohio. Grew up, middle class, worked hard, played sports, things like that. Somehow found my way into digital marketing over the years, and have been working in the space for about 6 years now, primarily specializing in Amazon Ads. But yeah, just slowly have developed a passion for learning and growing within the space, and just eager to share some of the insights and wisdom that I've picked up over, the last several years of working in the space. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, so I got my start working at an Amazon Ads automation software company, and since then I've been in the Amazon space, for solely focused on Amazon Ads for the past several years, working at small agencies, large agencies, doing freelance. And now Andrew and I are actually working at the same company doing Amazon Ads. And we're also both doing we both kind of have our own side hustles running our own boutique agencies in the evening time. But, it's actually a funny story how Andrew and I met. A previous coworker at a different Amazon Ads agency. He and I, we were coworkers, we became friends, and afterwards he was like, "Hey, you should really meet my friend Andrew. I think you guys would get along well." And so his name was Brett, and he put me and Andrew in like a group DM on Twitter. So that was my first exposure to Andrew, just seeing him tweet some messages, and I think we played a couple of rounds of like World of Warcraft together, and still never really knew who you were. And then the company I was working at was hiring, so we got Andrew on board, and he joined the company. And 6 months later, we were like hanging out in El Salvador together in person. So so we went from online friends to real life friends, and now we're doing this podcast because, like Andrew said, we're both very passionate about Amazon Ads, doing them right. We strive for success in everything we do. And we know that there's a lot of other people out there who are also striving for success and wanting to be better every day, but they might just need a little bit of help. We had a lot of people help us, pour into us, give us knowledge when we were getting started. So we just want to provide some of that, make it free to anybody to listen into this podcast. So with that, like I said, this is the first episode. We have no idea what this podcast is even going to be called yet. We have no titles. Well, we have some titles. We haven't settled on one. I'll read you a couple of the titles we've been thinking about. We were thinking of the Amazon Ads podcast. Simple, plain cut, SEO value, right? That's anyone listening to this should know, keyword indexation is key in SEO and PPC. So maybe we just call it the Amazon Ads podcast for anyone looking.
Yeah. Is there any copyright issue with that? I don't know.
I don't know if we can say Amazon in the name.
I don't know if we can say Amazon Ads. That's kind of a thing.
True. Okay. What else did we have here? Advanced strategies. That one's kind of boring.
Ooh,
I like this one, Andrew, you came up with. The 1%ers.
The 1%ers? I don't know. It sounds kind of
classist.
A little too bougie. Yeah, a little too.
I like it. Because I was thinking the abbreviation OP, double entendre there, like overpowered. But also,
most people that I say OP to, they don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
so
but those
I
who
don't know
know
if that one works. If you know, you're overpowered for sure.
All right, here's one your wife came up with: Ad Daddy.
Yeah, that one's got me so far. She's pretty hung up on it. She's wondering when we're gonna finalize it and go with her request, but we'll see.
Only
I like
ads.
that one Only has
another one.
Interesting connotations with that one for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the vibe we're going for or not, but
Yeah,
it's a little nod to something that maybe we don't agree with, but
yeah. I don't know. I personally like the 1%ers, the Amazon PPCers, the PPCers 1%ers. I don't know. I think something there. But by the time we publish this episode, we'll have figured that out. So that being said, Andrew, what are we talking about? What is our actual topic of discussion for this first opener episode?
Yeah, absolutely. This first podcast, we wanted to make sure that we instilled some foundational ideas with you, and not just everything that you're seeing everywhere else you listen to. It's not another Amazon podcast, and so we want to start with 5 basic principles that to always return to throughout your journey in running Amazon ads and working in this space. So to kick that off, the first principle of today's discussion is to never stop learning. Steve, you want to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I think both you and I are very passionate about this. Something that we're always thinking if we were ever trying to hire, which we've both been in positions where I think we have been, but the most important thing for me personally, if I'm hiring someone, is are they self-taught? Are they able to learn on their own? Because if that's the case, I don't care if they don't really have the resume yet, they can get there as long as they're motivated to keep learning. And when it comes to Amazon ads, that is 1000% a necessary principle. And I know it's not quite, maybe if you're listening, then you're thinking, I wanted more specific Amazon stuff. And yeah, we'll get there. But this can't be overstated, especially because Amazon itself, the whole platform, is adapting, evolving faster than the content can be produced. I think that's part of why we wanted to even do a podcast episode or create a podcast is to kind of help people keep up with all the latest changes that are happening in the Amazon space. But the reality is they're happening so fast that you have to be able to observe them changing as they're happening and be able to basically teach yourself what the next best practice is before anybody else has time to come up with the next best practice. Is that probably a good way to put it, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just having a level of curiosity and willingness to just explore on your own, like just spending time inside the console, looking around, noticing new tools and experimenting with them, seeing how you can leverage them is one of the foundational pieces of how I learned how to do Amazon ads. And I think it's vitally important, especially if somebody's trying to get started in the space or is looking to maximize their performance within the platform. Just having a level of curiosity to explore new features, explore new tools and things like that Amazon comes out with. And just so you're aware, you may not even use all of them, but just having an awareness of what the possibilities are. And I feel like that's something that definitely lacks in everyday world. You don't run into a lot of people who are highly aware of their environment. Like I always say this as just an example, like look down at your keyboard. You spend all day using this keyboard. And can you tell me what the F6 button does or the F5 button does? Most people can't tell you what that button does, yet they use that keyboard every single day. And that just shows a lack of awareness of your environment and a lack of awareness of the full capabilities of the tools at your hand. So I think that's directly applicable to Amazon, and the same idea applies. If you're unaware of the tools and the capabilities, then you're always going to be one step behind of the person who is willing to dig into that and learn a little bit more and adapt a little bit more quickly than you are.
Yeah, and especially your competition, right? If Amazon releases a new targeting capability or a new report that allows you to optimize more efficiently, and I remember when sponsored brand videos came out. Actually, when sponsored brand videos were first rolling out and in beta, it was like not enough people jumped on that right away because people were didn't want to test it. They're like, oh, what is this? Okay, videos, cool, and they just moved on. Rather than being like, let's jump on it, let's test it, let's learn about what this is, let's learn how to optimize it, let's create a system specifically for this campaign type for how to run it. And you would have missed like the greatest 3 to 6 months window of opportunity of low competition on sponsored brand videos. So
Yeah.
Just stay curious, stay aware. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you already are curious and aware. So that's great. Good on you. Great start. The final thing I would add here is just don't be afraid to break things. It's better to break things, I think, and to learn, because in the future, your increased performance as a result of that learning experience is going to more than pay for itself in whatever the costs were short term. I mean, don't break everything. You know what I mean? Like, break things with reason, within reason. But yeah, I mean, whenever I'm working with other account managers, I'm never afraid to let them fail, because if we lose performance for short term in order for them to learn a long-term lesson, it was worth it to me. We don't want everything to like fail, right? There's some balance there, but yeah,
there's guide rails.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to break things. So that's the first principle is never stop learning. Now we're going to dive into some more of the PPC specific principles.
Okay. Yeah. So principle number 2 is proper bidding covers a multitude of sins. And basically what we mean by that is that your keyword bidding and your targeting bidding can make up for poor campaign structure, multiple product ad groups, you name it. If your bids are properly set, then that'll naturally take care, and you can probably get, between 70 and 80% of the performance that you would with an optimal structure. You can, if you're paying attention at all and you're running to ads to bad keywords, or you're trying to target the wrong keywords or whatever, if you're paying attention at all, you'll notice that you're not generating, good performance. And if you're changing those bids appropriately, down bidding things that aren't converting well or converting at the rate that you need, then you'll solve that problem naturally by decreasing those bids. So bidding is one of the core principles that, we harp on and we spend a lot of time digging into. We've developed several different formulas and methodologies for how to do bidding across a variety of scenarios. And as a core principle, that is one thing that you should always return to in evaluating your campaign or account's performance.
So whenever I take on a new account from previous management, one of the guarantees I give them, it's a word of mouth guarantee. I don't put anything in writing just because writing things in writing can be tricky, but I guarantee a certain level of performance. I guarantee that within the first 30 days, the performance difference between what happens under my management versus previous management will more than pay for the services of whatever my rates are, or I'll give them their money back. And yeah, it's not in writing, but only because it's kind of difficult to quantify that, but I will try to quantify that either in reduced wasted ad spend, or either increased sales or reduced ad spend or better margins or whatever. And I've yet to have anybody complain and ask for their money back, because we've so far met that guarantee every single time. But if anybody was ever not happy, I would certainly, I wouldn't charge it for the month, and I'd say, sorry, it didn't work out. But the reason why that is singly because of keyword bidding. Because any other manager out there, like if I take over account, it doesn't matter how messed up the structure is, how messed up everything is, the keyword selection, they got all kinds of things. Do a couple rounds of keyword bids and it sorts everything out. All of the horribly irrelevant keywords based off the data will have their bids reduced down to like 2 or 3 cents, to the point where they're effectively paused, And and everything else that was driving sales is going to get the exact bids that they need to continue growing those sales. And it's just an immediate overnight performance difference. So that's always the first thing that I do. Ever taken on an account, run the bidding algorithms that we have, that Andrew and I have actually worked on a lot together to refine and tweak. But yeah, I mean, anybody, they're usually, bidding covers a multitude of sins. The data itself, if you have the right bidding systems, it will save your butt in so many ways. And so I guess the principle here is really make sure you know how to do your keyword bids. Keep listening to these podcasts, because we will go into a lot more depth. I think right now we essentially have 4 different bidding algorithms for 4 different scenarios. So maybe we'll create 4 different episodes talking about each one. But yeah, we don't really like relying on automated bid automation tools. We were using one at the start of the year, and we knew it was going to be a problem on January 1st when the tool was looking back at December's performance to determine the bids for January 1st. And we tried our hardest to not have inefficiencies, but unfortunately there were some inefficiencies based off of that. So anyways, Andrew and I really like doing manual bid optimizations, and that's where we've seen maximum performance come out. And so we'll talk in later episodes. Stay tuned. Should be good. But yeah, that's principle 2. Proper bidding can cover a multitude of otherwise PPC sins.
Thanks for that, Steven. Principle number 3 is don't overcomplicate it. See a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, all these other influencers and stuff getting hyper granular, doing stuff that is way too overcomplicated for what we need or for the purposes of what we're trying to do. For example, I've seen people talking about, instead of just having one auto campaign for, a particular product, they will have 4 separate auto campaigns to represent the 4 targeting types within auto campaigns. They'll segment those out. So they'll pause 3 of them in each of those auto campaigns, and they'll have 4 separate ones to break it out so they can set their bids accordingly for that campaign. Like, Steven, have you ever heard about that? You heard people doing that kind of stuff?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I mean, I was actually looking at this list of things that we said not to overcomplicate, and I was just thinking we could probably make this list 10 times longer of all the things that I've seen. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so that's a big one. You don't have to do that. That's unnecessary complication. You're going to just ramp up your number of campaigns. Another way to ramp up your number of campaigns is to segment your campaigns by match type. So I've seen people do this. We've tested this and done this and seen virtually 0 difference in performance, just a difference in size of bulk files. But this one, where we have campaigns segmented at the match type level, we have auto campaigns. We have our broad match campaign, phrase match, exact match, all segmented at the campaign level. Also segmented at single product campaigns. That's another one that definitely adds a layer to that. And then the third thing we have here is you don't need single keywords for every keyword that you're targeting.
Yeah, single keyword campaigns.
Single keyword campaigns. Sorry about that. Yeah. Definitely seen people advocating for some severe isolation of keywords, and a lot of people in comments and stuff thinking, you need to set up a single keyword campaign for every keyword that you're running ads to. And that's just definitely not the case. Again, overcomplicating it. Do you want to expand on that one a little bit?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, what I think it comes down to is people like a bit of mental, it's almost like OCD kind of, but they like a level of like mental organization, and I think they can sleep better at night if they know that their whole entire account is broken out at the campaign level, that everything has been perfectly isolated, where they have all of their auto campaigns broken out by the 4 different auto targeting types. And so they got at least 4 auto campaigns for every single product, and then each product is in its own campaign. So they got single product campaigns, and then all their auto campaigns broken out. And then for their keyword campaigns, they're separating broad match and exact match and phrase match and product targeting, all separate campaigns, all separated by individual products. And then also single keyword campaigns, and they just like knowing how there's never going to be the same search term that appears in every single, the same search term can't possibly appear in 2 separate campaigns because they've perfectly negated everything. So every exact match and all these things, it's just, you don't have to overcomplicate it, man. like that's kind of, I think what we're saying is you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're not really going to get additional performance. And these are all topics for another time. In fact, something else that we actually want to do on this episode is bring in multiple guests, having differing views, and actually have like these roundtable discussions and let people kind of have at it, and we'll just moderate the debate. But we just certainly want to have debates on this podcast as well. But yeah, you really don't have to overcomplicate things. So don't feel overwhelmed by all of the knowledge sharing that's happening on LinkedIn and people saying I tried this strategy and this as soon as I switched to this strategy, everything like 10x for me. Because something else just to keep in mind too is that like what happened for them doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. They could have had any other number of variables involved there. Like they switched to this one strategy and their sales 10x, but also their products just came back in stock after being out of stock for 12 months, and also their competitors' products all went out of stock, and also it was Prime Day. Like all those things might have happened. So, just stick with the basics, and we'll talk more about it. So I'm excited to really dive into our thoughts on campaign structure and all these things. So we'll talk about that, but you don't have to overcomplicate it. Just basics win games. Just stick with like you got your auto, you got your manual, just like do your normal keyword harvesting. You don't have to segment things into a billion separate campaigns, and always keep in mind that bidding covers a multitude of sins. So if you ever mess anything up there, as long as your keyword bids are right, it's all going to work out,
One other thing that people, at least I've seen people complicate quite a bit, is just the number of software tools that they like to use. I see everybody's always looking for the next best tool that's going to solve their problem, make their business grow. I don't think that. I mean, I've used a lot of different Amazon tools, and there are a handful of them that I think really help for different scenarios. But man, people, especially, Amazon business owners, they love to have every single Amazon tool that they can get their hands on. In my opinion, I think like just for specifically for ads, since, we kind of advocate for doing a lot of the bid optimizations manually and stuff.
You only need one tool, which is our tool, and it's $100 a month.
That's right. So yeah, get rid of all your other ones, and then you'll be able to afford this one
and
that we're about to pitch to you.
This podcast, what it's about is pitching this tool.
Yeah,
Just kidding. We don't have a tool. I'm kidding.
No tool yet. But yeah, so the one that you do need is for your ads is a platform that'll allow you to house your data. Given that Amazon's reporting or dashboard only gives you access to the last 90 days worth of data, you have to have somewhere to house your data so you can, look back on how last year's performance was at this time. You can do a lot more analysis. You can break things out more granularly. You can, pull different reports more efficiently than you would, just using Amazon's ad portal. So first one, something to house all of your ad data. Second one, research tool. One of the most popular research tools that, everybody uses is Helium 10. And, we're big advocates for that. We use it ourselves. And it's a great tool. It helps us do a lot of keyword research, rank tracking, and things like that. So those two types of tools, one to house your data and one for research, are absolutely fundamental. It's not something that you need to overcomplicate and be wasting your money on another tool that does basically the exact same thing as one of these other ones does.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, there might even be a tool that does both of those things together extraordinarily well, but that's essentially it. You need a tool that can help house data and synthesize it, because we all know Amazon reporting is not the greatest. So you need a solution for that, for reporting. And then you need a research tool. And just another example there on the reporting thing is if you're trying to see, say you're coming into Christmas, it's November right now, and you're going into December, and you're wondering, man, what were the top keywords from December of last year? What were the ones that were my best performers? You're not going to be able to pull that information from Amazon. You'll have to have been with the tool for the past 12 months and have it be storing your data that whole time. And so if have a larger budget, I would say if you're spending at least, $20,000 a month, maybe even lower, maybe $10,000 a month. I don't know where we think the threshold would be, but Andrew, at what point do you think is an account spending enough that they should be investing in a tool like that just for the sole purpose of it, at least just data storage, if not any of the other features that the tool might do?
Yeah. I mean, probably close to 10K. I think if you're investing that heavily, in your business, you're probably, $10K a month, you're probably doing close to, 100K, in total revenue.
You're probably doing like 20 or 30 in December.
Yeah, for sure. So at that point, I mean, it would become super useful for you to have that extra data looking back that far.
So our fourth principle is use math. It's a great principle. Like, use math. And in fact, all these principles are probably, they sound very, I guess, obvious and common sense, but I think they're helpful reminders because a lot of times I need reminders for the simplest things. Like, for example, get 8 hours of sleep. I need to remind myself of that all the time because it's a very important principle that's easy to forget. So I think that's probably what we're aiming at here, but use math. I see so many frustrated sellers, particularly in the comment sections on LinkedIn, who are talking about the problems that they're experiencing and, sales going down. Sales going down. That's actually a great example. Sales going down. They don't know what to do. What's the problem? And or they have a goal like, I need to grow my sales. Whether their sales are dropping or they need to grow their sales towards a certain goal, they don't know how to come up with a mathematical formula or equation that can give them the answer, or at least a pretty accurate estimate. And that's something that, Andrew, I think you and I, with our day jobs, we're constantly doing that. I mean, multiple times a week, different questions coming in from client or bosses or whoever. And, we're getting these questions. And I think the average person would just say, oh, Amazon doesn't give us that data. Sorry, because Amazon doesn't give us almost any data. I think a lot of people just throw their hands up and like, oh, Amazon doesn't give us that data, so nothing I can do. But we do our best to pool all of the different variable or all the different data points that we do have and turn those into variables and see the relations between each things and correlations and try to come up with some type of a model that can at least give us a rough estimate. So this can mean, just to give a couple of examples, like let's say, what is it? Right now it's April. We're halfway through the month of April. Let's say your current ACOS is like 35% and you're halfway through the month and you need to end the month at 30% ACOS. Do you know the exact math of what needs to happen in your account at like a keyword to keyword level in order to bring that ACOS down to 30% by end of month? Like exactly what keyword bids you need to change and by how much you need to change them in order to ensure that by the end of the month you're at 30%. Because we do, and that's some of the math that we're going to be talking about later on in more episodes from here.
Or, for another example, how much budget do you need to increase total sales by 10%? Factoring in all of the different variables that could play into what it would take to increase your sales by 10%. Things like factoring in your ACOS, factoring in diminishing returns, keyword volume, CPCs, the organic lift that you experience with increased levels of spend. All of these types of things need to be included in your formulas and your equations and things like that help you get to that estimate or get to some sort of like directional insight or number or metric that you need to in order to be able to answer questions like that. Steven, we get these all the time. I mean, just last week we were talking about, what the organic lift of our previous ad spend was in another month. And we came up with some very like deep formula for how we calculated that. And most people, I feel like, would default to the easy way of answering that question, which is, I don't know how to determine what that is, instead of trying to at least get somewhere close to measuring what that actually was.
Yeah, and there's not going to be, you're going to have to think for yourself. This use math thing also means it takes some time thinking about it. Like, I can't tell you how many times, I don't think I have any notes written out now, but I mean, Andrew, specifically when we were talking about what do we do with all of the 1 to 2 click keywords that don't have sales yet, how do we optimize those bids? And you had texted me about like one of the thoughts that I gave you. I have this Post-it note on my desk that I'm constantly, whenever an idea comes through of like, how can we calculate the optimal bid for the thousands of keywords that have 1 or 2 clicks and no sales. And I think we figured it out, but I'm just like putting down some logic for how do we take this average and that average and all these things and bring them all together. And then I send those ideas to you, and then you can fact check me and tell me like where the logic breaks down or whatever. But the point is, there's no, if you try to do Google or ChatGPT, you're not going to find that answer. You've got to sit and think, and you just got to think about these things and think about the logic and the math involved to get you to a bit of an estimate. And yeah, if you're trying to figure out how is your paid revenue impacting your organic revenue, how are you going to calculate that? Like, how are you going to actually measure that impact? What variables are you going to be pulling in? What keywords, what search frequency rank, or another question. So, client asks you, or your boss asks you, or whoever, how much budget can we spend before we start hitting diminishing returns on our ROAS? Or like maybe right now, your ACOS is at like 35%, or let's say 30%. Right now your ACOS is at 30%. Your boss says, hey, we can spend up to 40% ACOS. What kind of budget, what additional budget do we need to hit that until we hit that 40%? Do you know how to calculate that? Because that's all kind of the stuff that, we're trying to answer those questions all the time. And we're constantly trying to, pull all the different data that we have together and come up with a system to create these estimates. And so we'll talk about these. That's something else that we're planning on doing with these episodes, is when we have these interesting problems that we think other people are, with these interesting, I shouldn't say problems, challenges. We have interesting challenges come up that we need to solve. And we think that these challenges are probably things that sellers everywhere are experiencing, or advertisers everywhere are experiencing. We're going to just share those thoughts, totally open it up to your guys' feedback, let you, come at us in the comment section, and we'll do our best to reply to everybody. But yeah, use math. It's a math job. Don't let the automation do all the math for you. Like, use your brain.
The automation's usually wrong most of the time.
And there's that too.
In our experience, I mean, I don't know how some automations get to $20 bids, but popular ones do.
Until they make it open source, I'm not trusting automation anymore.
Hey, yeah, that's right.
And if it's open source, when people make their code open source, it's not like I'm going in there and auditing the code. I don't know code, but I trust that if someone else would have caught any issues, it would have been big news. So if there's no big
think
news,
they would have told you.
Yeah, exactly. If there's no big news yet, yeah, exactly. All right,
sure.
Let's wrap this up with our 5th and final principle.
Principle number 5 is think for yourself. Question everything you hear, especially when it comes to anything we say, anything you see online. It's very important. And I catch myself doing this all the time, just kind of leaning into the herd mentality, or just going along with the common train of thought in the industry around certain topics and things like that. But one foundational principle, that we try to lean on as much as possible is just being independent thinkers and bringing your own ideas and your own way of thinking to the table. Tends to help with just better brainstorming, better problem solving, and it's great to have a multitude of perspectives at the table, and different ideas can spring new ideas that lead to better and better execution. So thinking for yourself is totally important. I think that it becomes most important in that every account is totally different. Every category on Amazon is behaving differently. For example, we work with an account in one category that is seeing, a bit of a demand lull, whereas another account is absolutely booming and seeing a ton of growth within that category. So you can't treat those two accounts or two clients as the same, and not everything is always going to work for the one client as it does with every other client that you work with. So it's very important to take a unique and thoughtful approach to everything that you're doing within your advertising.
Yeah, and I think part of that think for yourself also, I've said this before, if anybody's ever heard me speak on other podcasts or do a sales pitch. It's a very common thing in my sales pitch, but I always say there's best practices and then there are practices that get best results, right? So it's fine to start with the best practices, especially if you're just starting out and you're newer. Yeah, go with the best practices, all these things, and then take those best practices and make them into practices that get you the best results. Like take them, tweak them. Just because someone else called them best practices doesn't mean it's the best possible strategy for you to maximize all of the different goals that you have. I mean, rarely does anybody ever have just one goal. There's all kinds of different goals, especially the larger the brands, the wider reaching the goals that they have with everything that they're trying to achieve in terms of certain level of visibility, certain level of reach, and then also margins and also sales and all that. So yeah, it's totally fine to take all the knowledge that we're sharing and that other people are sharing as a starting point. But this principle is really like, please take this to heart. Nothing that we say is perfect or really even close to that. Like we're constantly learning. I've looked back at some other podcasts I was on years ago, and I'm just like, man, what an idiot I was. And that thing that I said is completely wrong now because new information has since come out, so there are a ton of influencers on there, like on LinkedIn, very loud, very vocal thought leaders. And I think, frankly, a lot of them have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They're just being loud, being vocal, maximizing engagement because it helps them out in the social network, like algorithms to give them better ranking and stuff. So their content first, get the content out there, blah, blah, blah. We don't really care if it's right or wrong. Just trying to get this level of engagement because it's good for business. And that's not something that we're trying to do. I think we're really trying to prioritize quality over any other form of quantity. I wish I could speak sometimes. But there's actually a quote that I heard one time. I think it was my math teacher who said this to us one time. But he said, it's better to remain a fool. Sorry. It's better to remain silent and appear a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And so I think that's probably what you and I are doing right now, Andrew, is we're opening our mouths, trying to share something that's hopefully helpful to somebody out there, but also we're probably going to make fools of ourselves. And several years down the road, look back on this and realize all the different things that we said were wrong as we received more information. But my point being there is do not take anybody's word for just truth, right? Make your own truth. I'm going to stop talking because I don't know where I'm going with this. Andrew, save me.
Take everything with a grain of salt that you
there
hear.
There we go.
That's
what I was looking for.
I think that's what you were looking for sure. Yeah, I mean, but that's what you want, right? Like you mentioned we're going to open our mouths and probably be a fool. We're going to look back at this and make fools of ourselves. That's what you want, right? Because that just shows the growth that you've experienced in the process. If you're able to look back on who you were a year ago or 2 years ago, and you can point to yourself and be like, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. This or that. That's what you want, because that is showing a level of growth within you, within your knowledge, within your skill set. And that's important to have. So don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself by speaking up as well.
All right. I think that concludes this first episode. So let's just quickly recap the Ad Daddy podcast.
Oh, is that what we're going with? Are we going with the Ad Daddy?
I don't know what we're calling it. It's starting to stick with me, though. It's starting to resonate a bit.
It's got a ring to it.
So 5 principles for success in Amazon advertising. Number 1, never stop learning. Constantly stay aware, stay curious, explore, and teach yourself new things.
Number 2, proper bidding covers a multitude of sins. If ever you're in doubt, go back to the bids, right? That's going to solve a majority of your problems.
Number 3, do not overcomplicate the ad management. Make sure you get the bidding down and everything else is going to go a lot smoother. And then if performance is lacking, bidding can probably fix most of it, but do not overcomplicate things by trying out all of these crazy wild strategies that are trending on LinkedIn. The new trend of the week of different campaign structures. Not necessary.
And if you do find yourself in a little bit of a pickle where performance is lapsing, Number 4, use math to determine what the potential causation is, as well as provide a potential solution, or just have a good analytical explanation of why that performance might be lapsing or performing really well. So math is absolutely fundamental and foundational with PPC. We're working with numbers all day, so having a good grasp of math and strong formulas that help you produce strong results is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and Andrew's the real data expert, by the way. So we'll be excited to dive into all the different things that he does in Excel to create these. He's a wizard of math, so
we're going to teach you some cool stuff.
Yeah, cool content to come. And the 5th final principle: think for yourself. Please, 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 please be an independent thinker and don't just regurgitate what you've heard into an Amazon account. Take everything with a grain of salt and modify it, adapt it to fit your needs. We'll hopefully be able to provide more mental frameworks around how to kind of think logically through these processes. We'll give you some best practices and then supply some additional kind of guardrails for how you can think about modifying this and what kind of questions you should be asking yourself of whether or not these strategies are right for you and how you can tweak it. That's the final point. And I'm excited, Andrew, what we've kind of put down on potential topics in the future, I think is going to be good. We're going to be hosting some debates around some of these campaign structures we talked about. Should you separate your auto campaign? Should you not? Should you do single product campaigns or single product ad groups? Some debates on negative keyword uses, when to use them, how to use them. Do you use them at all? Keyword match type segmentation, search term isolation. We got a whole bunch of stuff. And then a bunch more. Yeah. It's good. It's good. Good stuff coming, guys.
We got some good stuff in the works for you guys. We're definitely going to get some opinionated people on here too. We're going to have to invite some people on here. Yeah, get some new faces in here. You don't want to see us. We're not even we're kind of ugly dudes. So it's like you don't want to look at us. And you're probably not even looking at us right now. So
hopefully not. Yeah, maybe we just shouldn't do the YouTube section at all.
Oh yeah, should we cut the video?
I got a face for radio. That's what my mom tells me. So.
Oh man, I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. Episode 1 in the books. Feels good, man.
All right. And then cue epic outro music. Go.